Have you ever found yourself feeling like you're always a step behind? Like everyone else in the room is effortlessly in control while you struggle to keep up? Maybe you've been in a conversation where someone twisted your words with just a smile or made you second guess your instincts with nothing more than a subtle glance. It's not luck. It's not charm. It's strategy. The reality is most people react. They speak too quickly, reveal too much, and lose their footing before they even know the game has started. But you can be different. Imagine holding a quiet power, one that doesn't rely on noise or flashy gestures, but on discipline, clarity, and restraint. A power that doesn't manipulate, but masters itself. What if you could read people's intentions before a single word was spoken? What if you could shift the dynamics of a room, steer conversations, and change outcomes, all without raising your voice? This isn't about tricks or gimmicks. It's about timeless principles grounded in Stoic wisdom. Are you ready to stop being pushed around by the world and start navigating it with purpose and intent? Stick with me, and these 6 insights will transform the way you perceive power and how you wield it. 1. Master emotional stillness. Have you ever watched someone lose control in the middle of a conversation? Their tone shifts, their voice rises, their words become desperate. That's not strength, that's weakness. It's a person handing over their power without even realizing it. In every room, every negotiation, every moment of conflict, the person who controls his emotions controls the outcome. Not because he shouts louder or dominates, but because he remains unmoved while everyone else unravels. True Stoic power begins with the understanding that emotions are not facts. They are simply fleeting impressions. Wise individuals observe these emotions, but they don't let them dictate their actions. You don't need to erase your emotions entirely. You simply need to command them. A person who lets anger rule him, who reacts to every slight, or who responds with rage to every insult, is ultimately being controlled by others. He's like a puppet, pulled by invisible strings. When you raise your voice in anger, you may feel a brief sense of power, but in reality you've just revealed your vulnerability. You've shown that someone else controls your inner state. That's not mastery, that's surrender. Emotional reactions are predictable, and anything predictable is vulnerable. Once others know they can upset you or provoke you, they own you. They don't need to defeat you. You'll defeat yourself. Think back to the last argument you were pulled into. Maybe someone insulted you, challenged your worth, or mocked your efforts. What did you do? Did you react immediately? Did you raise your voice or send a cutting reply? And in the end, what did it bring? Peace, calm? Or did you lose your position only to fall into their frame? That's where most people lose, not in the public eye, but in their own minds. The Stoic, on the other hand, waits. He watches observing insults as tests and anger as traps. He knows that silence can wield more power than shouting ever could. Picture this. You're standing before someone trying to provoke you. Your pulse remains calm, steady. You don't react. You smile slightly. You don't chase after their chaos. You let them burn out while you remain unshaken. That is what true control looks like. Some will tell you that showing emotion makes you human, that it helps build connections. And yes, it does if you control when and how to reveal it. But when you spill your emotions at every push, you become predictable. And what is predictable is controllable. A man who can be easily read is a man who can be easily played. In a Stoic life, emotional restraint isn't about being cold, it's about preserving your center. As Marcus Aurelius wisely reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. This isn't just a poetic line, it's a strategy. The world will push you, but your emotional mastery will determine whether you move with it or stand above it. Building on the power of emotional stillness, let's talk about how your response, or lack thereof, can truly shape your interactions. When life pushes you, how do you respond? People will provoke, challenge, and insult you. They'll misunderstand you and try to throw you off balance. And each time it happens, you'll face a choice. Do you react out of impulse, or do you respond from a place of inner discipline? The true power lies in the pause. The man who can stop himself before speaking holds far more influence than the one who tries to dominate a conversation with sheer volume. Imagine someone insults you in front of a crowd. The tension is thick and everyone is waiting for your reaction. But you stay calm. You say nothing. Maybe you simply nod, or perhaps you choose to walk away without a word. That silence, your silence, speaks louder than any reply ever could. You've just shifted the power without even using force. It's a quiet strength. By remaining composed, you've controlled the frame of the situation. And the frame is everything. When you're always reacting, someone else is setting the terms. They're deciding what matters, what gets your attention, and how you should feel. But when you control your emotions and maintain your composure, you define the environment. You decide what's important, what's worth your energy, and who truly holds the power. Now here's a hard truth. Most people are slaves to their emotional reflexes. A sarcastic comment makes them defensive. A dismissive tone triggers their anger. A delay in response sends them into a spiral of anxiety. They think they're thinking, but in reality they're simply reacting to every emotional wave without pause or reflection. The Stoic man, however, is different. He chooses what's worth his energy. Not every fight is worth engaging in, and not every opinion demands a response. He lets others reveal themselves through their noise while he builds his strength through stillness. If you want to command respect, don't explain yourself emotionally. You don't need to justify your worth through endless arguments or debates. Your true power lies in staying grounded in your values. Even in the midst of confrontation, you don't need to meet fire with fire. Let your calm demeanor speak for you. Let your stillness become your statement. Watch how others begin to grow nervous, trying to provoke a reaction from you. And when you don't flinch, they start to crumble. Think of yourself like a general, not a soldier. Let others waste their emotional energy while you prepare for the longer game. Keep your tone steady, your mind focused, and your responses to a minimum. When you do choose to speak, make it sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Don't allow people to bait you into reacting. Instead, let them chase your silence. There is immense power in restraint. It disarms attackers, unsettles critics, and solidifies your presence in any room. When you respond only when necessary and with purpose, people will listen. They might not admit it, but they'll respect it. Deep down, everyone understands that composure signals depth and strength. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, is this reaction truly worthy of my energy, or is it simply a test of my discipline? You don't have to respond to every storm. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. That's how power works in the Stoic world. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's deliberate, it's steady, it's immovable. Start with yourself. Hold the line within, and the rest of the world will begin to adjust. And once you master this, you'll be ready for the next rule. Let silence lead. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, silence becomes not just rare, but the most powerful tool you can wield. Picking up where we left off, let's dive deeper into the power of silence, one of the most overlooked yet most potent tools at your disposal. In a world where noise is often mistaken for strength, the Stoic knows the real source of power. True influence doesn't lie in the loudness of your voice, but in the depth of your presence. When you remain silent, you're not empty. You're observant. You're listening, watching, and measuring every move. While others rush to speak, to prove themselves, to fill the space with noise, you conserve your energy, keeping it sharp, like a blade in its sheath. Look around you. How often do people rush to fill the silence? It's as if the discomfort of stillness is too much to bear. They scramble to avoid it, desperate to escape the uncertainty that silence brings. But it is in that uncertainty where true power lies. When you remain quiet, others are forced to project. They begin guessing what you're thinking. They interpret your stillness in countless ways as judgment, wisdom, or even indifference. The more they guess, the more they reveal about themselves. And they do this not because you asked, but because they simply can't sit in the silence you've created. This is where the Stoic finds his leverage. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't speak to chase approval or to defend his ego. Instead, he watches. He lets others reveal their true selves through their words, their reactions, their fears. And when the moment comes for him to speak, his words cut through the noise with clarity, because they are few, but deliberate. There's a powerful story of a Roman general who once attended a council meeting saying absolutely nothing. His enemies thought he was weak. But when he finally spoke, just one sentence shifted the course of the entire campaign, ended the argument, and earned him the loyalty of the room. This isn't just a tale, it's strategy in action. The Stoic doesn't speak to fill the void. He speaks to make an impact, and every moment of silence only enhances the power of his words. Silence is also a test of character. Can you sit across from someone and say nothing, holding their gaze? Can you let the discomfort grow without rushing to fill the void with unnecessary words? Most people can't. They start rambling. They over-explain. They reveal things they hadn't intended to, confessing, softening, negotiating with themselves, just to escape the mounting pressure. But you remain still. You hold the line. In high-stakes negotiations, the person who speaks the least often wins, not because they're hiding anything, but because they are anchoring themselves in the moment. They allow the other person to rush to reveal more than they intended. Then when they finally speak, their words are simple, direct, and cut straight to the heart of the matter. That restraint, that's power. That discipline, that's persuasion. Even outside of high-pressure situations, silence still holds immense power. In a business meeting, for instance, a well-timed pause after a question signals confidence, not confusion. In a job interview, allowing a brief moment of quiet shows that you're not eager to please, you're confident in who you are. And in everyday conversations, a person who speaks less is often valued more. Why? Because others sense that you're not grasping for approval. You don't need to be liked. You don't need to prove yourself. And that's why silence is sacred. Silence reflects inner sufficiency. When you don't feel the need to respond to everything, when you don't flinch at every comment, people feel it. They begin to treat you differently. They lean in when you speak. They wait for your opinion, your reaction. And when they get no reaction, they start questioning their own. The Stoics taught that control begins within, and silence is one of the clearest signs of that control. This isn't passivity. It's not weakness. It's a deliberate position, a tactic, a discipline. It says, I know who I am. I know what matters. And I don't need to perform for your approval. Here's the deeper truth. When you're constantly talking, you become ordinary, predictable, accessible. But when you speak with restraint, you become rare. And rarity commands respect. Let your voice be something that is earned, not something spilled recklessly in every direction. Speak like each word has value, like each sentence is carefully crafted and impactful. In the end, silence is not the absence of power, it's a signal of strength. When you let silence lead, it speaks volumes. Picking up from the power of silence, let's now delve into the next layer of strategy, the power of strategic misdirection. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them fill the silence work for your perspective, because what is scarce, what is hidden, becomes valuable. Silence itself creates contrast. It gives shape to your words and meaning to your presence. Without silence, your speech becomes just noise. But when silence precedes your words, even a single sentence can shift the entire room. The goal here isn't to be mute or disengaged. It's about being measured, knowing that timing matters just as much as the content of your words. When you finally speak, having held your silence like a blade in its sheath at just the right moment, the effect is unforgettable. So train yourself. Learn to be still in a room that craves sound, where everyone is scrambling to be heard. Let others stumble over their need to be understood. Let them fill the air with words while you stand firm in your presence. And when you do speak, make each word count, like it's been chosen in battle. This isn't just about conversation, it's about strategy. It's about composure. It's about dominance through stillness. When you master silence, you no longer need to convince people. You simply command. And once you're able to command with that calm, unshakable strength, you're ready to take the next step. Be strategically misunderstood. There's a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It watches from the shadows, observing, letting others speak, letting others guess. And in that silence, it controls the entire field. This is the art of psychological misdirection, a Stoic weapon of perception and restraint. It's not deception, it's discipline. The discipline to remain unreadable, to hold back just enough of the truth so that others fill in the gaps on their own. And in that space between what they think they know and what is real, you take control. Most people go through life like open books. What they feel is written on their face. What they believe is broadcasted in every word. Their strengths, their insecurities, their thoughts, all laid bare for anyone to see. There's a certain honesty in that, yes. But there's also exposure and predictability, and anything predictable can be outmaneuvered. The Stoic understands that power doesn't always lie in what is shown. Often it lies in what is held back. You don't need to impress anyone. You don't need to prove anything. You need only to remain composed while others reveal themselves. Let them misjudge you. Let them think you're slower, softer, less prepared. Let them assume you're disinterested or uninformed. That illusion becomes your cover. It lowers their defenses, it makes them relax. They start speaking more freely. And in that comfort, they slip up. They speak carelessly, revealing more than they intended. They show you who they truly are, not because you forced it, but because you allowed them to believe they were in control. Meanwhile, you're watching, listening, and remembering. And when it matters most, you move. There's an ancient Roman wisdom in this, subtle yet powerful. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, don't mirror their aggression. Don't respond in kind. Don't show your full hand. Instead, remain still. Let them think the game is theirs. And then when the moment is right, reveal the sharpness they never saw coming. This strategy isn't about being someone else. It's about understanding when and how to show parts of yourself, and just as importantly, when to keep the rest concealed. You might downplay certain things. You might let others assume what they will. But in doing so, you're controlling the narrative, setting yourself up for the perfect move when the time comes. Picking up from the idea of strategic misdirection, let's now explore how restraint and calculated silence can be used as powerful tools in conversation. You don't always need to reveal your knowledge, not out of false humility, but to see how others might overstate theirs. Sometimes you might let someone believe they've outsmarted you simply to watch how their overconfidence exposes flaws in their thinking. You might agree in the moment, only to hold back your true conclusions, reserving them until you've gathered enough to act decisively. This is misdirection, but done with intention, not deceit. The average person plays life in straight lines. What they say is exactly what they mean. What they feel is exactly what they show. But you are not average. You are deliberate. Where others rush, you pause. Where they react with emotion, you remain centered. You give just enough to keep them guessing, but never enough to fully reveal yourself. Because when you are fully known, you are vulnerable. And when you intentionally remain misunderstood, you become untouchable. Imagine the quiet man in a room full of talkers. He listens, he nods, he gives nothing away. People speak freely around him because they sense he is not revealing anything. They mistake his calm for passivity, but what they don't see is the calculation beneath. Every word, every gesture, every glance is carefully noted, stored, and measured. And when the time comes for him to speak, his words are precise and impactful. The room shifts, not because he was loud, but because his words were sharp and well-timed. Even in moments of confrontation, this tactic holds. When someone pushes you, insults you, or tries to provoke a reaction, you offer none. Instead of resistance, you give them a simple nod, not in agreement, but in indifference. That silence, that stillness shakes them. They expect defiance, but instead they meet composure. And in that moment, they begin to doubt themselves. That doubt creates hesitation, and that hesitation gives you space. And in that space, you gain everything you need. The best kind of misdirection isn't about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about withholding just enough so that people walk themselves into the wrong conclusions. And when they realize it, it's too late. You've already positioned yourself exactly where you need to be. This isn't manipulation. It's mastery of impression. In a world that rewards noise and speed, your restraint becomes your leverage. The Stoic doesn't reveal his strength until the moment demands it. He's willing to be overlooked, underestimated, even dismissed, because he knows that the right moment of revelation will come. And when it does, it hits harder, because no one saw it coming. You don't need to dominate every conversation. You don't need to chase recognition or approval. What you need is to remain patient, purposeful, and perfectly unreadable until the moment matters. Let others reveal themselves. Let them talk. Let them assume they've figured you out. And while they do, you watch, you prepare, you wait, because the one who seems harmless is rarely guarded against. And when your true edge is revealed, it's 10 times sharper. Let this lesson sink in. Power is not always about presence. Sometimes it's about absence, what is not said, not shown, not explained. In that absence, you gain clarity. And in that clarity, you gain an advantage. And with that advantage, you move forward, ready for the next rule. Turn absence into strength. What is seen too often loses its weight. What is always available begins to feel ordinary. And in a world obsessed with presence, the rare individual becomes unforgettable. Scarcity, when applied with Stoic intention, is not a tactic to appear aloof. It is a deliberate form of discipline. It says, my time, my presence, my attention, they are not given freely. They are earned and they are measured. Most people give themselves away without thought. They respond to every message, show up to every event, speak in every moment of silence, not because it's needed, but because they fear being forgotten. Building on the idea of absence creating value, let's dive deeper into the power of scarcity and its strategic use. Many people confuse constant presence with influence. They think that the more they show up, the more they'll be remembered. But in reality, what they create is predictability. And as the Stoics teach, what is predictable becomes powerless. You don't need to be everywhere to make an impact. In fact, the less they see you, the more they notice your absence. Absence, when chosen wisely, becomes louder than any attempt at visibility. It forces others to wonder, to think, to ask questions they wouldn't have bothered asking if you were always around. That mystery becomes your advantage. The less information you provide, the more others will project value onto you. Not because you claimed it, but because you withheld just enough for them to fill in the gaps themselves. This principle works because human nature, untrained by reason, always chases what seems scarce. When you become selective with your energy, when you stop explaining every decision or responding to every invitation, you signal something subtle but powerful. Your life is no longer governed by demands, but by priorities. Take the example of a man who rarely speaks in meetings. While everyone else rushes to contribute and be seen, he stays silent. He listens. And when he finally speaks, the room falls quiet. Not because he demands attention, but because he has earned it through silence and timing. His presence feels weighted, not scattered. His opinions feel valuable, not repetitive. That is the power of scarcity. It's not about absence for the sake of mystery. It's about aligning your presence with your purpose. As Epictetus reminds us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because it means you've stopped trying to be seen by everyone. You've withdrawn from the need for constant validation. And that withdrawal, done with clarity and intention, makes your presence sacred. Scarcity also teaches others how to treat you. If your time is always available, people will treat it as though it's worth nothing. They'll cancel, delay, and overstep because you've taught them there's no cost. But when you set clear limits, when you pause before responding, when you reserve your energy for what matters, people will adapt. They'll come prepared. They'll listen more closely. They'll measure their words because they know yours are not given lightly. This principle applies even to conversation. A man who speaks with restraint forces others to lean in. His words aren't forgotten because they're not wasted. He becomes someone whose silence carries meaning and whose speech carries weight. This is scarcity in motion, a presence that speaks more through what is withheld than what is expressed. Consider this: elite circles are built on this very principle. Not everyone is allowed in. Not everything is explained. The rules are unspoken. The doors are guarded. And the silence surrounding them speaks louder than any advertisement. It's not arrogance. It's about preserving the value of what is rare. Now apply this to your own life. Pull back from the noise. You don't need to post everything. You don't need to be reachable at all hours. You don't need to explain why you've disappeared. Disappear and let your silence do the talking. Reappear when it matters and let your presence feel like an event. Continuing from the idea of scarcity and the power of presence, let's move into how you can lead with subtlety and intention, guiding others without force. This is not a routine or a trick. It's not about playing games. It's about training others to see you as someone whose time is sacred, whose focus is unwavering, and whose attention isn't for sale. When people see that you operate on your own schedule, that you're not begging to be included, they begin to respect the force that drives you. They stop assuming access to you and start earning it. And most importantly, you begin to protect your own energy. You stop running toward every opportunity to be seen and start walking with intention toward what aligns with your highest standards. You don't dilute your presence, you refine it. Let others rush to be everywhere. Let them exhaust themselves chasing attention. You remain silent, remain measured. And when you do move, you move with clarity. In a world full of noise and exposure, the man who is rare becomes revered. Let this remind you, you don't need to be seen by everyone. You only need to be remembered by the right ones. And now that you've mastered scarcity, you're ready for the next principle of unshakable power. 5. Lead quietly through reflection. There's a quiet kind of strength that doesn't shout, confront, or demand authority. It doesn't impose control. Instead, it moves like water, subtle, patient, and precise. This is the strength of mirroring. A Stoic understands that influence doesn't always come from force. Sometimes the most effective way to lead is to reflect what's in front of you. Gently guide the situation and let the other person feel as if it was their idea all along. People trust what feels familiar. When they sense you speak like them, move like them, even pause where they would pause, something disarms within them. They stop resisting, they feel seen. And once someone feels understood, you've crossed a threshold that no argument or logic could ever open. The Stoic doesn't need to win debates. He wins minds by making others feel safe in his presence. And mirroring, not mimicry, but calibrated alignment creates that safety. It begins with observation. You notice how someone sits, how they phrase their thoughts, how fast or slow they speak, where their energy sits, whether high or low. Then you match it gently, not like a puppet, not like a game, but with deliberate presence, just enough for them to think, this person understands me. That moment of recognition, though it may seem small, opens doors that brute force would slam shut. Everyone wants to be understood. Not everyone admits it, but it's true. And if you enter a conversation with too much difference too quickly, too intensely, too polished, too fast, people will put up walls. But if you meet them where they are, in rhythm, tone, or body language, they soften. They relax into the moment. And in that stillness, you find your opening. From this point, something almost invisible happens. They begin to follow your lead, not because you push them, but because you've created alignment. Influence, after all, is not about control. It's about movement. And when someone feels emotionally safe, they will move with you. That's what mirroring does. It builds rapport without demand. It builds trust without pressure. You haven't taken control, they've handed it to you. This technique is especially powerful in subtle power games. The Stoic knows that dominance doesn't come from raising one's voice or taking up space. It comes from guiding the tone of a conversation without the other person even noticing. You shift the rhythm slightly. You slow your speech. You ask one thoughtful question. And if they follow in speech, in posture, in tone, you know you're in position. If they don't, you adjust. You wait. You stay present. This isn't performance, it's strategy wrapped in stillness. Even in conflict, mirroring becomes your quiet shield. When someone tries to provoke or push you instead of responding in kind, you stay calm, remain present, and let the conversation unfold naturally. Your power lies not in how loud you can be, but in how effectively you guide the rhythm of the moment. Building on the concept of guiding others through presence and calm, let's now explore how you can effectively navigate any situation with control and clarity. When someone comes in hot, reactive, ready to argue, you meet their intensity just for a moment. But not to fight, not to escalate. You simply acknowledge their energy. And then, like a Stoic, whether in a storm, you lower your own. You slow your voice. You create calm within yourself first. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they follow your lead. Not because they've lost, but because you've offered them something steadier to match. This is how you de-escalate without ever drawing a weapon. You guide them out of their own fire, stepping in just long enough to show them the way. It's a subtle dance, but a powerful one. The same principle applies in persuasion. You can have the most logical argument in the world, but if you're out of sync with the person in front of you, they won't hear you. Words bounce off armor. But when you first reflect their tempo, their concerns, their worldview, even if just briefly their guard drops, and that's when your words can finally enter. Stoic influence doesn't work through emotional appeal. It works through presence. A grounded man speaks not to be heard, but to be felt. Once mirroring has established trust, you begin to steer the conversation. You change the pace, shift topics, adjust the tone. You become like a conductor shaping the rhythm of the dialogue. They think it's a good conversation, but you've orchestrated the flow from the first word. This is not manipulation. It's moral strategy. You're not leading people for personal gain. You're guiding them because clarity, calm, and connection are far more effective than argument, volume, or pride. And here's the deeper truth. People remember how they felt with you more than what you said. Mirroring isn't about being liked, it's about being aligned. And when someone feels aligned with you, they trust you, even if they don't fully understand why. That's when influence becomes effortless. You don't have to convince, you don't have to argue. You simply stand in quiet authority and they walk beside you without resistance. The Stoic doesn't need the spotlight. He shapes the moment without claiming it. He understands that guidance doesn't always come with titles or control. Sometimes it begins with silence, with presence, with the ability to mirror calmly and then to lead gently. In doing so, he becomes the still point in the chaos, the one others lean toward without knowing why. So next time you enter a conversation, don't rush to be heard. Watch, listen, reflect, guide, and remember, when you master the rhythm of others, you begin to shape the flow of everything. From here, the next level of influence becomes possible. You're not chasing control, you're walking it into the palm of your hand. 6. Walk away with clarity. Power is not always in action. Sometimes it's in absence. A Stoic man understands that strength isn't just about knowing when to speak or act. It's about knowing when to leave. The most dangerous presence in any room is the one that doesn't need to stay. He is unattached, undisturbed, and unmoved by the outcome. He isn't here to prove himself. He's here on principle. And when that principle is violated, he doesn't argue. He exits. Most people cling to relationships, positions, conversations, even conflict long after the value is gone. Not because they believe in it, but because they're afraid to walk away. Continuing from the concept of walking away with clarity, let's explore the true power that comes from knowing when to disengage. Fear of losing something can trap people in cycles of compromise. They mistake enduring suffering for loyalty. They tolerate situations they should walk away from, accept things they would never advise others to tolerate. But that's not resilience, that's quiet desperation dressed as patience. The man with a plan, the man who has trained his mind and clarified his values, knows the power of walking away. He doesn't make a scene. He doesn't burn bridges. Instead, he removes himself with such clarity that the silence left behind speaks louder than any argument ever could. His absence creates pressure. His withdrawal forces reflection. It leaves others questioning their position, not his. This isn't about being cold or indifferent. It's about being clear. You've already set the terms. You know what aligns with your direction and what doesn't. So when something violates that, you don't plead and you don't explain. You simply depart. That is the highest form of discipline, leaving not from emotion but from reason. Whether it's a conversation that has turned fruitless, a deal that wastes your time, or a connection that drains your peace, you don't try to fix everything. You assess, decide, and exit. Not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. You've already done the work of deciding what you will accept, and because of that, you never feel trapped. This clarity makes you unpredictable, not erratic, but unconstrained. People can sense when you don't need them. And when that happens, everything shifts. In business, your terms become stronger. In relationships, your presence commands respect. In every social setting, you move with quiet authority. Why? Because you are not ruled by the fear of exclusion. You've built your life in such a way that no external attachment controls your inner state. Even in the midst of an argument, the wise man knows that sometimes the most powerful response is silence, followed by departure. Let others raise their voices, let them spin their stories. You simply walk away and let the emptiness speak for you. And later, when they replay the moment wondering why you didn't stay and fight, that silence becomes your echo. That absence becomes your imprint. Walking away doesn't mean weakness. It protects your future. It shields your time, your clarity, your energy, and it protects you from bitterness because you left before you were drained. You turned the page when the story no longer served your growth. And that is what people notice even if they never say it. They recognize the man who isn't desperate, the one who doesn't cling, the one who isn't afraid to walk away. And when they know you can leave, they begin to treat your presence with reverence. That's the quiet power of the exit. And from that stillness, you move forward, prepared for whatever comes next. True power doesn't need to shout. It moves quietly, sees clearly, and chooses wisely. These 6 rules are not tactics for domination. They are disciplines of presence, sharpened by restraint and guided by reason. When you master your emotions, speak less, let others misjudge you, hold your distance, guide with subtlety, and know when to walk away. You no longer react to the world. You shape it. Most people live on the surface, caught in noise, trapped in their need to be seen. But not you. You now carry the calm of a man who knows himself. So if this message stirred something within you, take a breath and let it settle. Subscribe if you're ready to keep sharpening this edge. Drop a comment saying, "Stay 5 steps," to anchor it in your mind. The world doesn't need another voice trying to prove something. It needs a presence that can't be ignored. Be that presence, and I'll see you in the next lesson.